Oh boy, that piece of maple looks like it came from Home Depot. I didn't want to build this jig, I had to. That wide rough-sawn lumber has to be flattened and I don't have a large joiner. That, and Maggie said she doesn't love me anymore.
I never said that.
Yes, you did.
I just said you couldn't buy a $9,000 joiner.
It's the same thing, Maggie. Now, joiners are great tools, but they have a couple of drawbacks. First, they can take up a lot of space. And when you're doing large projects, depending on the size of the joiner and how much material is removed, they can create a lot of wood chips that fill up dust collection very quickly. And like most woodworking tools, the bigger you go, the more expensive they get. What if there was a way to get around these drawbacks with another tool that is already found in many woodworking shops, and one that takes up much less space, doesn't fill up the dust collection anywhere near as fast, and costs 2 to 3 times less than a joiner with the same capacity? I'm talking about the bandsaw. It's so much more capable than just cutting curvy parts and making thick lumber thinner. Not that there's anything wrong with curvy parts. The size of the bandsaw, the type of blade being used, and how the bandsaw is tuned all play important roles in its function and capabilities. This jig that I've made for my 15-inch Harvey bandsaw has nearly, if not entirely, replaced the need for a joiner in our shop. And at first glance, it might look a little bit intimidating, but if you stick with me, I'll show you in detail how I made it and share some of the information about the blades we use and how we tune our saw to get optimum performance. That'll really help you level up your bandsaw kung fu. It's been a couple days since that last section of the video was recorded, and we've had some time to play with this. And we've changed a couple of things, mostly about the clamp system. We've shortened them so we can't use those as a reference point when we're putting our material in. And I'll explain that later on in the video after we watch the build portion of this video. But before we get into that build portion, there's one thing I want to say and make very clear. I'm not poo-pooing joiners. Joiners are amazing tools and they're absolutely necessary for people that use them all the time. The fact of the matter is, we would probably only use a joiner 2 or maybe 3 times a year because most of the material we use is S4S. We just don't have the need to mill rough sawn material very often. That said, joiners can also take really light skim passes. With this system, you've got to take an 1/8 inch of material, otherwise that blade's just going to skip along the outside of the material you're trying to cut. But if you do want to build a system like this, whether you're using it for co-planing sides or just some resawing in a very sturdy, easy way to hold on to and move the material through, I'm going to show you how we built it. And it starts with this base. It's 80 inches long, 11 inches tall, and 7 inches deep. That wasn't a planned size, it's just the material we had laying around our shop. But the real magic of this jig is the clamp system. So let's jump into it. The main body of the clamp system is 3 3/4 inches wide and 11 inches tall. It serves to hold the clamp system and helps keep the base plate and side square to each other. After cutting the clamp body to its width, I cut a shallow dado in the clamp body 3/4 inches in from the face. Making a handful of passes, moving the table saw finch each time made short work of creating this shallow dado. Inside the dado there needs to be a groove for a 3-inch long 5/16 carriage bolt that holds the clamp to the clamp body. To cut the through groove, I start by drilling 2 5/16 holes in the center of the dado about 1.5 inches from each end. Over at the router table, after setting up both start and stop positions on my router fence, I take a few light cuts, raising the router bit slightly each time to connect the drilled holes. This makes for a smooth groove that the square tang of the carriage bolt will slide up and down easily. The runner is cut in a 3 3/4 inch piece of plywood about 15 inches long. Running it through the table saw on its side with the blade raised to 3/4 inch for the first pass, removing just shy of a blade's width of material. Then turning it over, repeating the process with a blade raised enough to leave the thickness of the dado. Sneaking up on the cut, taking light passes, and checking the fit each time will help achieve the best fit possible. Over at the miter saw, I cut each carriage to 2.5 inches long and then drill a 5/16 hole 1.25 inches down from the top through the plywood in the center of the runner. For the clamps I used hickory, but any hardwood would work. And after planing the hickory to a 1-inch thickness, I cut out a quick template to use for laying out the parts on the hickory. Each clamp needs a 5/16 hole drilled through it for the pivot system. Now I'm going to do that on my drill press before I go over and cut out the parts on the bandsaw. After the clamps are cut out, I need to drill and tap a hole in the tail of the clamp where a 5/16 hex bolt will go through, and this will create the clamping pressure we need to hold our material into the device. To make the clamps work, a stop block needs to be added to the clamp carriage for the bolts to push against. Scrap hickory left from cutting the clamps was perfect for this. I glue the blocks to the back of the glide. After the glue sets, a couple of pre-drilled countersunk screws will ensure that the block can handle any pressures it'll have to deal with. While I was building the clamps, Maggie added a runner to the body of the entire system. This runner will ride in the miter track, ensuring that it stays nice and true throughout the cut. With that done, and the clamps finished, we started adding the clamp bodies to the L frame. To do this, we just added a little bit of glue, pre-drilled some screw positions, and then screwed them into place. The screws pulled everything into square. Now, to make sure the material won't slide around in the system, Maggie added some Klein cork rubber to the base and then to the face of the clamps. So we just went through a whole bunch of information, so let me break it down for you. This is the main body of the clamp. This is the carriage system that's got the runner in it. Now that needs to slide up and down that groove, so when we put clamping pressure down on this pivot point, this just doesn't slide back and forth. That's what captures it and locks it in place. The carriage bolt goes through the back here, and the tang slides up and down in that groove so the bolt doesn't turn when we tighten it down. The clamp itself goes in place right here. Add a washer, and then we add my favorite knobs, the bow knobs. These knobs are super well made, the best you're going to find, and they're crazy fast to use. That locks the whole thing into position. So now when I have a piece of material in here and I tighten this 5/16 hex nut down, it is going to squish the clamp down, creating that clamping pressure I need to hold the material in place. To position my material in the jig, I use the face as a reference point, making sure I'm proud of that. And I can move my clamp into position. And at the top, I use this little spacer block to make sure that I'm positioned well at the top, and then just tighten my clamp down. Now that locks everything into place. I'll go down to the back side of it, and then I'll do the center clamps as well, just to make sure I have a nice secure hold throughout the whole thing. Once we have one side nice and smooth, you could obviously take this out and resaw it traditionally, but I like to leave it in the jig, and I'll flip it over in the jig. Then I use some spacing blocks just back here, push it up nice and tight against there, and that gives me a reference point, and then I can lock it back down in place. This is really where the advantage is in this jig. You see how thin that was right here? How thick it gets towards the middle and then it thins out again? We took a bunch of cup, bow, and twist out of that board in just 2 passes without having to do a lot of work on a joiner. This setup is making short work of flattening the maple we need for our next project. Well, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Keeping a consistent feed rate as you're pushing the material through the blade is pretty important. If you push too hard or change speeds, it can cause minor deflections in the blade, and you do see that when you're planing the material. Also, having the bandsaw and the blade tuned properly are very important. The bandsaw we're using is the Harvey 15-inch 3-horsepower bandsaw. It is a beefy machine with well-balanced wheels and a great motor. You could definitely do this on a smaller bandsaw, you just wouldn't have the resaw capacity that this one does. Just as important as the bandsaw is the blades that we're using for resawing. My favorites are the 5/8 3 TPI Greenwood resaw blades from Carter Tools. The Harvey bandsaw and Carter Tools Greenwood blades are a powerful combination, but none of that would matter if this wasn't set up and tuned properly. I learned to tune a bandsaw from the bandsaw master himself, Alex Snodgrass. So what I'm going to do is link his video on how to tune a bandsaw down in the description box below. When you go check that video out, make sure you subscribe. Your bandsaw will thank you. After we cut the material, we take it over to our planer. That leaves us with 2 sides that are coplanar, but we still need a straight edge to reference off of. So I built this large straightening jig for longer boards, and for the shorter boards, I use my table saw straight edge rip jig. Honestly, now that I think about it, I'm really glad that I built this system. It saved me a bunch of money and space in my shop, and now my dust collection can breathe easy. I guess sometimes, even though Maggie is super mean to me, everything works out in the end. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something from it. If you want to try the Greenwood resaw blades, there's a discount code in the description box below along with some other links. This video is in no way sponsored. Nobody's paid me. The folks over at Greenwood were just kind enough to give me that code to give to you if you wanted to try them. This system has worked out perfect for the 2 or 3 times that we're going to need to resaw, wider material. The jig we built will do up to about 12 inches in material. And if I need bigger than that, well, I'm gonna have to figure something else out. If you're not subscribed, but you think we've earned your subscription today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification next to it so you get notified when we put up new content. Until next time, we'll see you in the next video.